the first slide. Thanks everybody for tuning in to our third episode of our winter webinar series, New York GAA. We're delighted to be with Grace Walsh here, Tullaroan and Kilkenny inter-county camogie player. So Grace, thanks a million.
No problem at all, Mickey. Anytime. I still not used to these video Zoom calls yet.
Oh, you'll be grand. You'll be grand today, Grace. And we'll just roll off you've quite a successful career so far, Grace, with plenty more years to go. You've two. Well, if I'm wrong, Grace, just correct me, okay? But you've two county All-Ireland medals. You've 3 Leinster medals. You've 1 All-Star, 2 All-Ireland minors, 1 intermediate county and club, and 1 intermediate club in the Leinster. You have 3 All-Ireland senior camogie medals with Loreto College Kilkenny, in which you give my old school St. Pat's Mahara a few trumpets down the years. Well, not thank you for that, Grace, but can't take it away from you. You've had a great success and achievements to date. So this whole thing is just to get your perspective and your player pathway going up, Grace, and just maybe coaches and players can take 1 or 2 things away from this session. You know, we'll definitely call that a success. So if you're happy enough, Grace, we'll get going into the questions, if that's okay.
Perfect.
Just the first question there, Grace, is just about your journey and your player pathway from underage with Tullaroan to Kilkenny seniors. And so just to talk us about that there, did you come up through development squads or how did that start, Grace?
So I suppose with Tullaroan, we're a very, very small parish. There's not a whole lot to do in Tullaroan. So I suppose hurling and camogie was kind of that was our social outlet growing up. So I suppose from primary school, hurling was massive. Hurling and camogie is massive. So we had a teacher there. She's now the principal, Breda Holmes. So she trained all the teams in primary school. So I suppose it kind of started from there in Tullaroan, and then into the club as well. I suppose growing up at the very start, there was no camogie team as such. So a lot of us actually just played with the boys. And then there was a woman, Breda Marr. So her daughter Noelle used to play camogie as well. So she used to pick me up. I suppose she didn't want us to not play. She probably saw that we had some ability there, I suppose, from playing with the boys. So she used to bring us off to camogie blitzes, and she'd throw us in with another club, Freshford, just for the day, just to, I suppose, keep us involved and keep us active. So from there, then coming up to Kilkenny, there weren't really development squads when I was underage as such, but there were trials for what I remember. My first memory with Kilkenny was under 14. We had trials. I don't know how many different trials we had, but I was happy. I'd say I barely made the cut anyway back then, but the current players, Anna Farrell and Megan Farrell and Shelley, who's no longer plays with us, but their mother Helen. So she was our coach for under 14 Kilkenny team. So that's kind of where it started off. And I suppose between there and my school, Loreto Kilkenny, you were kind of playing a lot of camogie. So any different coaches that saw you, they might bring you on. You kind of knew the majority of the coaches that coached the Kilkenny teams underage. So kind of went from there, from under 14 to under 16 minor, then eventually on to senior. So kind of how it went for me.
Was there an age, Grace, you felt really when you really came into your own and you grew a bit more in confidence and ability?
I suppose underage, when I played under 16 and minor, when you're at that age, you don't really have any fear. And when I was called into the Kilkenny panel first, I think I was just turned 16 or I just turned 17. And I didn't really have any fear. So when I was training first, I enjoyed it so much. And growing up, I didn't know that many, we'll say, Kilkenny camogie players. They weren't really well known to me because I suppose hurling was massive then within Kilkenny. So I didn't know any players I was playing against. And it's something even now I still like, not knowing the player that I'm marking, because you have no fear. So I suppose at the very beginning, I really enjoyed it, and I suppose I was playing with a lot of freedom. When I was that bit younger on the Kilkenny team at the beginning, then kind of as you get a bit older, you start putting a bit of pressure on yourself. But I suppose the last 3 years, I'd say I've probably kind of come into my own. I stopped kind of letting mistakes get to me and stuff. in training and started to play with a bit more freedom. And I suppose I'm kind of trying to I'm starting to enjoy it that little bit more now, because the shackles are kind of off. I suppose I know I'm getting that bit older, so I don't have loads of years left playing, so I'm just trying to enjoy it now. So I feel like I'm kind of starting to come into my own the last few years.
Mm-hmm. And Grace, you touched on it there at the start there, but Tyrone and the social aspect, and there's nothing really else to do except hurling camogie. But did you play any other sports growing up at all?
So, not when I was in primary school, but I went into secondary school. I was in Loretto and Kilkenny, so it was a big sports school, and I probably dabbed my foot into pretty much everything. I played basketball, soccer, badminton, even at one stage. Played 1 year of Gaelic football, which I was shocking at. But the other sport that I really did enjoy was hockey. So I played that for all my years in Loretto, and I got to play in provincial hockey, and I actually got a few Irish trials as well, underage with hockey. I suppose I loved it at the time, but it did start to clash a little bit with camogie, and that's kind of when I had to make my choice between the two, and that's when I really knew that camogie was what I wanted, I suppose. And the sports are, while they're quite different, they're quite similar as well. I suppose it's another team sport. You have to be quite fit, and that for it. So I found that really benefited me coming into playing camogie, just for different types of running off the ball, or making different runs for scores. Because when I played hockey, I was actually a forward. So even playing camogie, then sometimes I was playing like a forward role as a back, if you get me.
Yeah.
So that was probably my other main sport, and it's something I definitely miss as well. I used to live with the Irish hockey captain, Katie Mullen. I lived with her for a few years in college, so I used to be kind of jealous of her going off to play. For ages she played camogie as well. So for ages we were trying to kind of see, could she come play camogie with me for a while, and I go play hockey. Unfortunately, happen, but that would have been one of my other main sports during my secondary school days.
Mm-hmm. It is interesting as the more these go on, like usually there's always a high profile player that has somebody that played soccer or basketball or rugby or something growing up as well, and they said that really helped with development. And it's interesting you're saying hockey as well, like it's something didn't have a clue about. But I guess especially with American sports, they all, everything sort of ties into each other, and you're using muscle groups and thinking ways you didn't used to think for your own sport.
Absolutely.
And this last one, just in this section, and it's really up to yourself. Brace, we got this question sent in, but you were in the Liberty Insurance All Star trip in New York there back in 2019. Is there any you took away from the trip, or like this can be anything, just the camaraderie with all the girls, or anything at all? Just as a question from one of the New York coaches.
Yeah. Was very extremely lucky to be part of that trip, and it was an amazing opportunity as well to go to New York with a big group of girls that I suppose from at the beginning of the trip we didn't really know, but by the end of the trip we all knew each other pretty well and have definitely made some lifelong friends out of it. We had a few group chats there on Snapchat, so a good few of us from different counties that would get on very well. We all ended up meeting up after the trip, but to go out to New York, to get to play in Gaelic Park, and to do a few different tours and do it with all those girls, it was a brilliant opportunity for us, and just so lucky. We were looked after absolutely by the New York GAA, by the Bogie Association, Liberty, everyone that helped us get out there. But it was an amazing trip. I would have definitely liked to have seen maybe one of the teams out there train or get to train or something with them, I suppose. But maybe another time. But a really enjoyable trip, and a trip that I definitely will never forget.
It was good for our younger players and stuff too, to see Camogie play at the top level by 15 or 30 girls that can hurl in any county in Ireland now, and definitely it was a cold evening too, but geez, it didn't stop the skill levels from being top class anyway. So Grace, thank you. We'll move on to the next section, which is coaches and coaching, and there's Brian Downey in there, in the middle of it.
Yeah,
So these are all just from your perspective from playing point of view, Grace.
yeah. So I suppose I mentioned her already, Breda Marr from Tullaroan. She actually set up our first camogie club underage. She was the woman that used to collect me and bring me off to play with another club just to keep me going. But she set up our first underage team, and no matter what team is playing, she's involved. And she's been there for my whole playing career, so she would have been a massive influence in terms of coaching. Up the way then I would have had Brendan Williams in Loretto for all my time there. He's a different style of coaching. He's a lot of kind of rules and stuff. But when you're starting out playing camogie and playing underage, they were very beneficial to me going forward. And I suppose when I'm talking about influential coaches, I can't but mention Anne Downey. She was the first coach to call me in Kenny back in 2010 or 2011. So she had a massive impact on my camogie career. She was gone for a good few years in between, but then was back with us again for 4 years, um, from 2016. And I suppose then she had Brian. Brian came in with her the year before last, which was brilliant. It was brilliant for camogie, and it was brilliant for our team just to have a male perspective and someone I suppose that played with Kilkenny himself as well. So they were a massive influence, and they just showed us what they showed us first of all how it can be done, because as you know, Angela, or Anne and Angela, Angela was involved as well. She's still involved with herself and Breda Holmes. They all played with that Kilkenny team that were just outstanding back in the day, and they have plenty of all Ireland medals that they like to boast about. So I suppose in terms of coaches, they're women that you would definitely look up to. So they had a massive impact. And then Brian, I suppose, became manager of us this year, and he had a few lads brought in with him. He'd Ray Chandler was already with us, Tommy Shefflin, Philly Lark, and Pat O'Neill. Like, do you know what more could you want? But I swear to God, this year the passion that those men had was incredible, and they really showed us. I suppose they brought us together again this year and showed us like what the game's about and what it is to win and stuff. So I found that I've had a lot of coaches. I suppose they're my standout ones, from the very beginning, and have had a massive impact on my camogie career, and would also still be people that I would look up to, and still people that I would definitely chat to a good bit. So
You mentioned passion there, Grace. Is there any other, if you had to pinpoint any qualities that a lot of them had, could you name a few more? Or
like, I suppose with them, they were passionate about the sport. As I've said, they just had like this fire in their bellies that, like, anything that they said, you just listened to. And I suppose because they had been there before, you knew that it meant that much to them. You could see how much that they wanted us to win, from underage up until Kilkenny senior. So I suppose it was just everything about them was real. And I suppose that was a huge thing. And because they had been through it as well, that's I suppose why you would listen to them.
Mhm. Perfect, Grace. From a player's point of view, and you've probably touched on it, but there's gonna be a lot of underage and adult coaches listen on to today and later on. From a player's point of view, what one piece of advice would you give them, to any coaches listening on here?
So I was actually, there's a ladies Gaelic footballer from Cork, Orla Farmer, and she, I don't know what she's doing recently, some sort of conference online, but she had gave her speech, but she shared a snippet of her speech online, and I sent it on to one of my brothers, and we were like, Jesus, that was amazing, and basically the gist of it, and I thought it was such a good piece of advice for any coaches from underage the whole way up to senior level, was to I suppose make sure that the girls or boys enjoy it. And it was that you go to a training session and you um you do this training session with the team, and I suppose you want them leaving wanting more. So you want to make it enjoyable for them, and you want them to not want the training session to finish. Like there's no training better than that, than when you're at the end of it and the coach is like, right, let's bring it in. We're finishing up, and when the bunch of girls or lads or whatever, like, oh, can we just go for another 10 minutes? I just think if you can mix up trainings but make them enjoyable. Obviously, you have to gain respect from your team, and I think you can do that, but also have a bit of crack along the way, because as serious as we all take it, we definitely have the crack in training, and I think that's what's important, especially for younger kids. Coming off the way, I suppose you want everyone to feel like it's a fair environment, and you want them to be happy playing. You want them to actually enjoy it, not be there because, you know, their parents are forcing them. You want them to be there because they want to be there. So I suppose it's to think of like different games, match-based scenarios that they'll actually enjoy, and make sure that they're happy when they're leaving training.
Mm-hmm. Great. I know not to pick favourites, but we've asked that question a few times, and I think that's one of the best answers yet. Grace, especially with
And
go on ahead.
actually,
Sorry.
sorry, just one other thing that I've just found coming up through the years, playing with a team is I know teams can have like favorites, I suppose, as such, but you always have your players that are outstanding, that always perform and that are brilliant. But what I would say is, what I've definitely learned over the years and what I found made great coaches were coaches that weren't afraid to drop the best player from the starting team for a particular match. Um, I suppose instead of always playing the same people all the time, if there is a girl or a boy that's there that are really putting in the work and are playing well, and then you also have a player that's just a really good player but are not putting in the work and just assume that they're going to be starting, I think that's when what makes a great coach is that they're able to separate that, and they're able to start the player that has put in the work but is also playing well, rather than start the player that has put in no work, um, and might not actually give the performance that you want them to give, but you just play them just in case. I suppose that's just one thing that I find, that you should definitely pick players on how they're performing in training, rather than that player is known to be really good, whereas this player might not be as well known to be good, if you get me.
Mm-hmm. Excellent, no, excellent, Grace, 100%. And I think it lends back to even teenagers, boys and girls, dropping out. I think if you do those two things and do them well, you'll get a lot of lot of long term game out of them. No, that's perfect, Grace. And you've probably already answered the last part of this here section, but making camogie attractive to young girls coming through it. Those are excellent 2 points. Is there another one, or you can leave it at that if you want?
No, but as I said, just to make sure that they're enjoying it, but also in terms of teams that I've played with and girls and stuff, some people just don't like to be as competitive as others. And I think when it comes to that, there should be two separate teams. A team of girls that are doing it for the social aspect of it, and a team that are there to win. You're always going to have girls and lads that don't really care about winning. They just want to do it for the crack. So I think that that's a thing as well, is where you should have those teams where girls can still go, but they're not expected to win every game, or play their best in every game, because then I think when you do that, you have everybody on the same page. So when you have that team that are there purely, they're fully committed, they all have the same mindset, the same goal, the same commitment, that's everyone's on the same page then. So that would just be one other thing, I suppose, to try keep everyone together, because you don't want people dropping off just because they can't give the same commitment. Whereas if you have another team that's more for a social aspect of things, then I think that would be good.
Mm-hmm. Just about really finding that balance stuff too, Grace.
Yeah, absolutely, because balance is key, and I think that's a thing as well, especially for girls that are, we'll say, maybe doing their leaving cert or whatever, they think that they can't study and play at inter-county level at the same time. But I suppose there are a good few athletes out there and GAA hurlers and footballers that have proven that point that you can. So I suppose it's to show them those people that have done it. And once they're willing to put in that work, that it can be done, and you can get the balance.
Class, Grace. Perfect. We're into the final two slides you'll be happy to know, Grace. But this is first class, really. And if anybody else has any questions you want to drop in the chat feature, so hopefully we can get around to them too if they're not not too bad. So you and your teams, Grace, just with like that winning team culture that you sort of touched on in the last few slides, but going from 3 tough All Ireland defeats to getting success this year, what was it this year about that had that winning team culture?
Do you know what I think a huge part this year was because of COVID. We had a massive break where we weren't training. The lads, all our trainers were excellent during that time. You know, they were texting us every week, making sure everything's okay. They were leaving the option there for us to contact them if needed. But a big thing was they gave us numerous hurling drills, numerous running drills, and it was basically do whatever you wanted out of these to keep yourself moving. They weren't forcing us to do this amount of running, this amount of hurling every second day or every week or whatever. It was kind of just do whatever you want to do during this time because everything is so up in the air. So I think when you're playing at inter-county level, you always kind of want to stay fit and healthy as well. So a lot of girls just did their own thing, took their time off and enjoyed it. And I think I suppose there's a lot of us that have been going for many years now, for the last 5 or 6 years in a row, getting to the All Ireland final day. So you're running the full season. Then you have girls playing with their clubs after that, doing really well with their clubs. So they're training, and then by the time they're finished their club, you're back into the inter-county season again. So what I found was a lot of people just were getting no break. So I think this year the break, what it did was we got to go home and play with our clubs once we were allowed back training again. We got to, for the first time in I don't know how long, for myself, I got to train with my club all the time before the matches. Usually it's inter-county season and then a week later you're starting into your club championship. So you've no actual time where you train, you know, with the girls that you've grown up with, your club mates, your friends since you're really young. And I found that was so beneficial to us because we all got to go train with our clubs for a few weeks before the championship even started. We got to just enjoy the club season, whereas we'd never got to do that before. And I think on a personal level, I really found my love for camogie again during that time. And I feel like the same thing happened with a lot of the other girls on the team. So when we came back to play with Kenny, we felt lucky that we first of all got to train together because of the pandemic. And I suppose everyone got to play with their club. They realised why they play. And anybody that was coming back training with Kenny in September, they were there. We were all there for the same reason. And I think that was huge for us this year. And I think that's what really drew us together. That, along with the management team, who are the greatest bunch of lads and women. They have great camaraderie between them. They all just get on so well, have the crack, but are able to be serious at the same time. And I feel like that's what really brought us together and brought our culture together, I suppose, this year. And instead of playing individual games in matches, we were just playing as a team for the whole year. We were hunting in packs. Everyone was just playing for one another, and I think that was kind of the difference this year, I suppose.
Mm-hmm. Did you find it hard? You know, did you find it hard staying motivated during lockdown? And I suppose even after, if you want to go back, you know, three tough All Ireland finals there, over the last number of years. Like staying motivated, how do you get yourself up to go at it again? You know, after a lockdown or after whether it may be a tough defeat like the year before, whatever it was, Grace?
Well, I suppose in terms of the defeats, the thing for us was just not to dwell on it. I think a lot of media like kind of bigged it up a lot more than we would have ourselves. Always kind of asking, did you look back or whatever? But the thing was, everybody knew what it was like to lose. We knew we didn't want that to happen again. But the thing was, we didn't dwell on it. We were just staying in the present and moving forward. In terms of motivation during lockdown was definitely very, very hard. For myself, I had been injured just before lockdown. I had just come out of injury before lockdown. Um, so I had been doing a lot of training on my own, and then to go back into lockdown and to just go back training on your own was very, very hard. But what I found was that I just mixed it up a lot. I didn't always go down to the pitch. If I wanted to take a week off where I didn't pick up the hurl, that's what I did, because that's where you find your hunger again. I did some online hit classes, just mix it up, to be honest. And I didn't I didn't make it in that I would go to the pitch at the same time every Monday or every Tuesday, do the same drills, because that just gets boring. So what I did was I just mixed it up a good bit, and if I did have to put down the hurl for a week or a few days, then that's what I did. I suppose wasn't afraid to do that, and that's kind of what kept us motivated. And then the closer it got to getting back training together, everyone was just buzzing. Everyone was just so excited. The first training back, everyone was like just smiles on their faces and just happy to be there, And I suppose we all felt very lucky that we did get to train together. So that was kind of our only motivation once we were back together.
And you basically answered the last question there that someone sent in, Grace. What are the best drills for training by yourself, and what do you focus on? But you sort of touched on it already.
Yeah, well, yeah. To add to that, I suppose growing up, I wasn't one to go out and practice all the time. Like the lads at home were very good for practicing, away from training, whereas I didn't. And it's one thing that I would definitely, if I could go back, I would do again. I would practice a lot more. But for me, training on my own is going down to the wall ball. I think wall balls are massive. But I think there's no point in going down and do an hour hitting the ball off the wall, being kind of lazy about it. But I think if you go down and do 15 minutes of striking the ball against the wall and sprinting to try to get your first touch, I think that can benefit you way more than being down there for an hour, but only barely hitting the ball against the wall. I think everything needs to be done at match pace and just for a short amount of time. You don't need to be going down to the pitch for hours. If you go down for 15 minutes and you put in hard work for that 15 minutes, I think it can really benefit you. And I just think when you're doing individual training, just the basic skills of camogie and as a team, that's actually one of the big things that we focused on this year was just the basic skills, first touch, catching the ball, all those small things that you think are not as relevant, but in the grand scheme of things, they're actually probably the biggest and thing about camogie is making sure that your basics are right.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. Have you done any underage coaching, Grace? Because you're bang on everything you're saying here today. Really couldn't agree more with you.
No, I know I haven't. I haven't done any. I don't have the time at the moment, but hopefully, once I move back to Kilkenny, I'll be able to get involved a bit more.
Perfect. And we're into the final slide here now. Grace, just in a few personal questions, just on your thoughts on them. What in your opinion is one of the most important skills of the game?
Definitely first touch. If you can get out in front of your player at full speed and get the ball into your hand, there's no stopping you really. And along with that, if the ball is in the air, catching is my other one. Because if you can catch the ball before it drops to the ground, you're 10 steps ahead of everyone else. So they would be my two skills that I think are most important.
How do you stay focused and relaxed before a big game, or do you have any superstitions or routines you go through?
I've no superstitions anymore. I used to be very superstitious, but I used to let that get to me. If something wasn't right, I was going to play a bad game. So I've got rid of those. I'm not superstitious at all anymore. But before a game, I suppose going on the bus, a few of us sit down the back. I like to stay nice and relaxed, so I chat and have the crack for a few minutes. And a big thing for me is I always sleep on the bus. When I was younger, I used to get really travel sick. So to stop me from feeling sick, I used to go sleep. So that's never really went away. So I just always have a bit of crack for a few minutes, and then I put my headphones in full blast, and I'll just fall asleep until we get to wherever we're having our pre-match meal. And then after pre-match meal, that's when kind of the match focus starts. Just listen. Attention, please. Big thing I do is I play in my head. I kind of play the match in my head. So I visualize myself winning the ball, but I also visualize myself making that.
Mm-hmm.
So I suppose how I stay focused on games.
Mm-hmm. Perfect, Grace. I'm sorry that was a library.
That's okay. I was
That's
thinking.
the library speaker. You covered well for me, Grace. Thank you. Where we at? We're in the last. We're in the last just of our own questions here. So, best piece of advice with regards to your playing career, and this is for any players listening, Grace.
Just to practice and get your basic skills right. That would be, for me, I would be a skillful player. I'm very committed. I'm very competitive. That's probably what's got me where I am. But I suppose in the last couple of years, what I realised is that I need to up my skills. And that was just getting my basic skills on point. And I just think first touch, catching the ball, getting to the ball, practicing for 15 minutes, 20 minutes. Once or twice a week it will make a big difference, and that would definitely be the piece of advice I'd give.
That is first class. I'm just exerted this here presentation here now.
Yeah.
And we're back. We have one question here from John O'Flynn, Grace, and he's over in Canada there, so he hasn't missed one of these yet. So it's 20 to 7 in the morning for him. And he just asked, has Grace any engagement with camogie players and their clubs in Canada? Two clubs that have competed at the USGA Championship. Have you ever did a J1 out in Canada or any city in the US, Grace?
Sorry, would you repeat that question? You kind of just broke up a little bit.
Oh, sorry. So has Grace any engagement with camogie players and their clubs in Canada? Vancouver and Toronto, two clubs that have competed at the USGA Championships. So do you know any players out in Canada, or have you ever did a J1 or anything like that there?
No, I've never been on a J1 to Canada, just to America, and I actually wouldn't know any players out in Canada, to be honest. Sorry, I know that's probably not the answer you want, John.
John, just write the Camogie Association and say the All-Star trip in 2020, 2021 or 2022, and that's for your best way forward, John.
Yeah.
I think that's all the questions we have from people listening. Grace, and it's just up to me to say thanks. I mean, like that was such an insightful and really honest chat, and you're saying all the right things. Like I couldn't, like if you were to I could pick a few things, I would be copying you word for word. So listen, thanks a million. Best luck with Tyrone and Kilkenny in 2021, and thanks for coming on this, Grace.
Thanks very much for having me as well. Thanks, lads, for getting up early as well, John.
And stop recording.